It was Halloween night, and 12-year-old Ben was ready for the best trick-or-treating haul of his life. Dressed as a classic vampire with a long black cape and plastic fangs, he and his best friends, Mia and Josh, wandered through the maze of houses on Maple Street. Their bags were already halfway full of candy, but there were whispers of one house at the far end of the neighborhood that was giving out king-sized candy bars, so naturally they had to go. The trio ventured down the dimly lit street, their footsteps crunching on fallen leaves. They arrived at the house, an old, creaky Victorian that seemed like it hadn't been lived in for years. The windows were dark, the lawn overgrown, and an old swing creaked eerily in the wind. Still, a single jack-o'-lantern burned brightly on the porch. "Dare you?" Josh whispered, nudging Ben forward. Ben hesitated but wasn't about to back down. With a shaky breath, he walked up to the door and knocked. No answer. He knocked again, harder this time. From behind the door, he heard something, a soft shuffle, then silence. The door creaked open on its own. No one was there, just an empty, dark hallway that stretched far into the house. "Let's get out of here," Mia said, her voice shaky. But before they could leave, a figure appeared at the end of the hall. A man, tall and thin, stood in the shadows. His face was hidden, and all Ben could make out was a butcher's apron tied around his waist. His hands, he was holding something shiny. Ben's heart raced. "We should go," he whispered, stepping backward. Suddenly the figure moved. Fast. Too fast. He bolted down the hall toward the door. The kids screamed and ran, racing off the porch and down the street, their feet pounding against the pavement. "Don't stop!" Josh yelled, looking back over his shoulder. But the man was still behind them. The sound of his heavy boots hitting the ground echoed through the neighborhood as they sprinted past houses, yards, and fences. Ben's chest burned as he tried to run faster, but no matter how hard they pushed, the man was closing the distance. The streetlights flickered overhead as they reached the end of Maple Street. They turned a corner, ducking into a narrow alley, and huddled behind a large dumpster trying to catch their breath. Silence. For a moment, they thought they had lost him. Ben dared to peek around the corner of the dumpster. But there he was, standing at the entrance of the alley, knife in hand, his head slowly turning, searching. "Where are you?" The man's voice rasped. Ben's heart thundered in his ears. His friends were frozen, too scared to move. Then, from somewhere down the alley, the sound of footsteps approached, heavy, deliberate. It wasn't the man. A police officer emerged from the shadows, flashlight in hand. "Hey!" the officer shouted, his beam of light slicing through the darkness. The man turned and fled without a word, disappearing into the night as quickly as he'd appeared. The officer rushed toward the kids. "Are you all right? Did he hurt you?" "No," Ben gasped. "He was chasing us. He just showed up." The officer nodded grimly. "There have been reports of someone wandering the streets tonight. You kids are lucky." Ben, Mia, and Josh exchanged terrified looks as the officer walked them home, his flashlight cutting through the dark streets. The candy they'd collected suddenly didn't matter anymore. Halloween had become something far more frightening than they ever imagined. From that night on, none of them ever went trick-or-treating again.